Grab your engineering notebook and let's talk about building codes. First building codes were identified about 4,000 years ago. Here's one of them, the Babylonian Code of Hammurabi. Don't need to write this one down. There's no little pencil icon here. But it says if a builder builds a house for someone and does not construct it properly, and the house which he built in falls and kills its owner, the builder is put to death. Pretty extreme, but I guess that ensured really good buildings. So, one thing I do want you to note is the purpose of building codes, and that is for the health, safety, and well being of public and protection of human life. So these are two main ideas that you need to make sure that you know for the purpose of building codes. And because of that, professionals are licensed because public safety is in their hands. So one major engineering failure that we're going to talk about later on, it was the 2007 Minneapolis bridge collapse. And we're going to take a look at what happened with that and why it happened. So that's coming up in second semester. So, other things to note about history of building codes, why did they ever even start in the first place, was mostly because of fire. So, in the 1800s, insurance companies said, hey, you are building your house out of matchsticks. That seems a little dangerous. So, we're not going to insure you anymore unless you build it using materials that are less flammable or that are safer so that we don't have to keep paying out money to let you keep building these really bad buildings again. So fires and insurance companies were really the main reason for the history of US building codes. The BOCA was the first major code group, started in 1915, sort of in the Midwest. Then there was another one in California, the ICBO, International Conference of Building, that published some building codes. Then we had a Southern Building Code in 1940. And that prompted the International Code Council, the ICC, because a uniform system of codes was necessary instead of having all these different codes throughout the US. So this started in 1994. So please note that the ICC, International Code Council, started in 1994, and they published their first edition of the International Building Code, which is referred to as the IBC, in 2000. This is not that long ago. 2000. We are not talking like the Hammurabi Code. So codes, when you look at different states, there's homes that are certainly older than this. They may have all sorts of different codes. They're relatively similar, but now at least they are they're all formed under one similar umbrella now, rather than just having similarity here or there using different code councils. So ICC, one thing that we're going to take a look at is, again, International Building Code, the IBC. IBC is the one that I need to make sure you note, because we talk about the IBC in different areas later on. There are also other codes, International Mechanical, Plumbing, Energy, Electrical, and so on. The International Residential Code talks about residential dwellings. And it also covers things like structural, mechanical, plumbing, electrical. So if you want to get into architecture and structural engineering and things like that using residential buildings, then you would become very familiar with the IRC. One thing I want you to note about in the IRC is in chapter 3 of that, called Building Planning, and they define a habitable space. I want you to define this as a space in a building for living, sleeping, eating, or cooking. So any space that you could live, sleep, eat, or cook is a habitable space. Here are some examples that are not habitable spaces. Bathrooms, toilet rooms, closets, halls, storage spaces. These are not considered habitable spaces. So there are specific codes designed for habitable spaces, and others that you can ignore certain things if you have non-habitable spaces. That's why they define them slightly differently. So make sure you know what a habitable space is, and these are examples that are not habitable spaces. So other things that you might see in the IRC, you're going to find codes around minimum room areas, ceiling heights, different things about means of egress, and so on. And we touch on a few of these things. Ceiling height has minimums, unless you have like a little Harry Potter room. Boo, 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 boo. Zap. Climate zones are also a part of the IRC and the ICC. You'll notice that if you look where we are here in Colorado, it's a little bit lighter shade because we're in a funky region, the Rocky Mountain area, where snow and everything is just kind of throws everything out of whack. So makes for our climate zone to be kind of an interesting thing. All right, so now we're getting into the quiz questions. Which of the following is not a habitable space? And the answer is a closet. Question number 2, what was the main reason codes were developed? And the answer is because insurance company responds to the loss of buildings through fire. That was sort of why it all started. And that's all I have for you on this lesson.